Anyone who claims to be a public speaking expert will tell you that if you want to give better speeches, you have to tell personal stories and you have to practice. But is anyone really giving you practical tips on how to do that? Well, stay tuned because I'm going to share with you the practical tips that I used to become the world champion of public speaking. Let's get into it. Now we shift to speech contest season 2016. At that time, I knew that my speech was relatable, so I decided to keep working on it and use it again in the following year's contest.
So fortunately for me, I have the benefit of being in close proximity to two districts.
Right.
My home district is District 38. That's where I initially joined Toastmasters. My corporate club is in District 18. So I work in Delaware. So that allowed me to be a part of District 18, and I decided to compete in their international speech contest in their district that year.
This was all well and good, but I needed to combat the other problem that I had back in 2015. I needed to improve how I practiced. For those who may not know, let me give you some context. Speeches in the international speech contest are timed. You will be disqualified from the contest if your speech is below 4 minutes and 30 seconds or above 7 minutes and 30 seconds.
And when I practiced the speech, I was finishing that speech at about 7:35.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just driving myself crazy. Like, why am I going over time so much?
Yeah.
So when I get to district, I just start flying through the speech.
Right.
It got to the point where I was just trying to milk time to get to the 6-minute mark.
Right, yeah.
And if you want to improve the way you practice your speeches, you first need to change how you think about speech practice. Don't think about practice as just reciting your speech out loud to an audience or to yourself. To me, practice means internalization. And there are many ways that you can internalize information. Perfect example, writing a speech draft. Personally, when I write out my speech, I feel that my brain is processing the words that are being written. And if it's processing those words, then it's internalizing those words. So I actually will remember them better. I believe this is why people will tell you that you should take notes when you hear a lecture, because it helps you remember them better. When I finally have a speech draft, I will then utilize the most important device on the face of the earth, the cell phone. All hail the glory of the cell phone. More specifically, I will use the voice recording app on my cell phone to audio record myself reading my speech, meaning that I recite my speech into my phone, and reciting a speech is what we formally know as speech practice. But it's not just enough to recite and record your speech, you have to listen to it. I'm sure there's probably a song that you know by heart. You know every single word to it. It's probably because you've listened to that song over and over and over again. You can do the exact same thing with your speech. Now, when I listen to my speech, I listen for opportunities to edit it and make it better. In other words, I'm going to reread and rewrite my speech, which means that I'm going to again internalize that information. And then of course, once you have that draft ready, you can then do what we normally think about when we hear the term speech practice. You can go up in front of an audience and test it out. Rethinking your approach to speech practice and implementing some of these actions will dramatically increase your speech practice frequency. But for me in 2016, it wasn't just about speech practice frequency. I also had to learn how to practice my timing better. I wanted to stop going over time in my speech practices, and in a live performance, I wanted to avoid speeding up and ending way early. The way I achieved this was actually something that I learned in music class, namely this music symbol right here. This note is called a full rest. When you see this note on your music sheet, you will pause for 4 counts. I incorporated the principle behind this note into my speeches, but it's going to be hard to explain what I did in words, so let me just show you what I did. Okay, what you see here is a draft of my 2016 semifinal speech from the International Speech Contest. And the first thing that you may notice is that there are these numbers that appear everywhere. These are my pause notes. Basically, I would pause for this amount of counts whenever I needed to pause in my speech. For example, right at the beginning of my speech, I paused for 5 counts. Let's take a look.
If you could be anyone in the world, who would you be? Maybe someone rich, someone famous.
This drastically helped me with my speech timing because not only could I keep track of every word that was in my speech, but I could also keep track of every possible pause. And there were some times where the pauses weren't as long, and there were some times where the pauses were longer. But I budgeted enough of these counts that I was able to control it in the moment. Something else that you will notice is that I break up the speech into different sections here. This is because when I do my audio recordings, I don't recite my entire speech as a whole. Instead, I will recite specific pieces of my speech. Not only that, I will do different versions of each piece. I will only take the best version and then put that into my final playlist. Then I'll take that playlist and listen to all the best pieces over and over and over again. This really helps you absorb the speech because you're breaking it down into smaller chunks, and it's easier to remember a smaller chunk than it is to remember an entire speech. Another benefit is that if I'm not satisfied with a piece or I want to revise a piece, I don't have to recite the entire speech. I can only take that certain section and redo it. It saves me so much time. Something else that you may notice is that all of my lines here are very, very short. This is because I choose to keep my sentences and phrases short so that I can keep track of the impact of certain lines. So instead of editing paragraphs, I will edit a phrase, I will edit a clause, I will edit a sentence. Writing my speech like this really helps me to keep track of the words that I'm using and edit it down for specific effect. It also helps me make sure that my lines are as concise as they need to be. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a crash course in my speech practice process. Now, I know that was a lot, but out of all the tips, which one do you think was the best? Which one do you think that you're actually going to include in your speeches in the future? Leave me a note below and tell me after the video. So what was the result of my 2016 speech contest season? Well, it just so happens that that speech that I originally hated, the speech that I didn't think other people would like, a speech that lost and didn't even get out of the district level the year before, that speech won the semifinals and landed me a spot in the 2016 World Championship of Public Speaking.
Yeah, but that shows you too the value of the craft of speaking. You know, that's something I've learned working with Dunn&Jayer is there's a craft to it, like whatever you say, a carpenter or an artist or someone, they spend years crafting, and getting better at it. We can do the same thing as speakers, where we can take something that, essentially wasn't great, but had a nugget or a core or something and recraft it, reshape it to make it a spectacular speech, which you did.
With that being said, I have 2 pieces of advice for you, and please listen to both. Firstly, don't think about finding or making the perfect story. Sometimes creating a good personal story will take time and it will take practice. You cannot always do it quickly. My winning speech in 2016 took 2 years to get it to a point where it could win higher level contests. Don't aim for perfection, aim for progress. Secondly, keep in mind that every tip and every idea that I give you is based on my process and my experience. If you like them, that's great. Use them. But if you want to tweak them and put them into your own processes, you can and should do that. There is no such thing as the way. There is only a way. I showed you my way. It's up to you to find your way. My friends, keep speaking, keep improving, and take care.